Welcome to another SmartBots .ai webinar. We're talking about the myths and reality of AI.
Right, I've been kind of in and out and doing a lot of different things. So, yeah, right now I've been elected and appointed the chief executive officer of the Homeowners Resource Center, which is a credit union service organization that serves banks and credit unions. We actually have both in this QSO, and we help banks and credit unions get better at mortgages. And we do everything from the origination side through underwriting, processing, all the way down to servicing. In the future, we're going to start adding some technology. The real focus here isn't just on the efficiency of running mortgages. The real focus of the QSO is how do we actually grow mortgages? There's a great stat out there. I believe it's a Gartner stat, and it's credit unions hold 43% of the accounts in the United States, but they only do 17% of the originations. There's a huge gap. And I think part of that is based on tech, right? Like they're not getting in front of members in a really efficient way. They're kind of relying on rates to be their differentiator, things like that. But they bring to the table this incredible ability to manage relationships with members. So what we're really trying to do here with this QSO particularly over the next few years is design programs and processes that allow these credit unions to really, frankly, get their fair share of the mortgages out there. And they should. It's the truth is they should have their fair share of it. And they're not. And so that's why we exist. So we're going to help to change the industry in that way.
I'm the CTO and co-founder of SmartBots. We help enterprises solve some real problems in the customer support and process enhancement, productivity enhancement across sales, supply chain. Customer support is our main chunk of business that we do. And we started with telecom. We also have worked with few pharma companies and few insurance as well. And this we have been doing for over 5 years. This is much before the ChatGPT disruption happened. So we are there. The tech has been evolving, and we have seen the entire cycle of transformation that has been happening from a tech lens.
Let's start with the bigger picture, and it's kind of a loaded question. When you hear AI and mortgage lending, what's myth and what's like real right now in your opinion? And again, it's only your opinion. We're not going to hold it against you.
Certainly is my opinion. I was just at the Mortgage Bankers Association annual meeting, and it was really interesting because somebody said something that I've been thinking about for a long time, which is AI is 80% hype and 20% real. And what is AI is the question everybody actually needs to answer, because there's a crossover in the industry around automation as looking like artificial intelligence, but not really fitting the mold of what AI is. But I have no doubt in my mind that everything in our industry is going to change, with one exception. I think there's one thing that isn't going to change in the industry. A mortgage is an individual person or a husband and wife, or it's the largest transaction that anybody's going to experience by far. I mean, it's on average it's 5 to 6 times larger than a car purchase. It's the only thing that might even come close to it maybe is student loans. But it is by far the largest transaction. And when you're dealing with something psychologically that is the largest, it's hard to see a world where a person isn't involved. Even I've bought many houses over my lifetime, and every single time I wanted to talk to a person. Now, I don't think that is generational either, because we see that with the younger generation too, that they're getting on the phone and they want to talk to somebody, because it's such a big transaction. So I think there's a lot of hype out there. Where I think it's actually going to start applying is on the back office. The actual processing of the application, the ability to pull data the agentic AIs being able to do, have conversations with individuals, particularly on things like document collection, stuff like that. That's all there. And I really see the early stages coming through is, help engines for loan officers, where for example, an AI engine is sitting on the phone with a loan officer, and the loan officer is having a conversation with a potential borrower or a current borrower, and the AI is doing all of the back end work that's being discussed, right? So it's keeping task lists for people, it's following up with the borrower, so that you're freeing up the loan officer to have these meaningful conversations with people, develop the relationships, put people in a place of comfort, in doing such a huge transaction. But all that minutia that has to happen, and is oftentimes the biggest complaint from the borrower, that there's so many little things I have to do, or we missed one or something like that. All of that stuff is being taken care of by a system, as opposed to a loan officer having to remember that they said, oh yeah, I have to send in a corrected W-2, or whatever it is, or some statement of explanation. So I see it's early world being in that space right there.
JP, let's talk to you for a minute. So, considering what he just said, what do you think, like how much is actually being branded as AI in this business that is really automation or glorified rule engines?
I would like to give a different perspective to this. When we are talking to enterprises, we are helping them deploy this kind of solutions. What essentially is happening is the enterprises have many people have different views on how this agentic systems will work. But one of the myths that I've seen is you have the enterprise data, you throw it to LLM, and you get your enterprise chat GPT. That is the expectations which people have. And then what happened, and even the vendors, the way they are working is like, okay, they quickly want to show some quick wins, and they get the entire data and then dump it to the LLMs and then see that, okay, this is the magic wand. Within 2 weeks, you are getting a powerful engine, right? So that's what has happened in the beginning. And slowly what is happening is, as we move forward, they realize that, okay, POCs are all good, or initial pilots are good, but when the rubber hits the road, when we go to the production, and all of the systems start failing. And that's when they realize that, okay, now this is not happening. Let's go back to our old processes and then start implementing workflows. Our natural or RPA plus plus kind of application started coming in. Because of the challenges, there is a good amount of engineering that needs to be done, which is really a hard and a new space for everyone to implement. Therefore, this RPA plus plus came into play for showing that, okay, there is some success. But I see that trend is changing. 2026 looks more positive, more agentic. But I've seen cases where for quick wins, people are moving towards workflows, but the potential is much higher.
Yeah, I have spoken with a lot of my friends that were at Money 2020, and the AI hype was like unbelievable. And Steve, I guess that the mortgage conference you just were at, same thing,
It's
right?
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's you can't throw a stick without somebody talking about it. But what's interesting about the conversations really are these almost searching conversations. It's a solution almost in search of a problem, and it doesn't exactly fit the mold of how we have dealt with tech in the past. The ability for the system to actually question you back is really, I mean, that's fascinating to me. But it is, I think, to your point, JP, when it comes to things like RPA and like these abilities for these systems to follow rules, there's a space for it that is beyond just feed it information and expect something in return. It's, feed it information, train it, and then have it do a job that normally is done by a human, like quality control, right? Like the ability to go in and check to see if everything's there, because there's rules, like in mortgage lending, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac have rules that you have to follow. An agentic system could and maybe they are now, go in, follow all those rules, and check every single file that's in a mortgage company to see if they comply with those rules and where they don't. And actually, there's a huge ROI to things like that too, because if quality matters in a mortgage, it finds itself at the point of sale, not the point of sale meaning the application, but at the point you sell that to an investor. If I have a quality system, I've lowered costs by using an AI system to actually do my quality control. I can sell it to an investor at a higher rate. And so there are massive ROIs out in these systems, and I think people are recognizing that, but there's still this kind of like searching for like, what is it we want this thing to do? And what are we and I think maybe the big question is like, what do we want to allow it to do?
What would it take for you to trust AI enough to underwrite $1 million loan?
I mean, it has to have done it before successfully. The measurement
on somebody else's paper too, right?
Yeah. I think that's actually the measurement. The measurement would be not whether or not I would allow it; it's whether an investor would take it. So the measurement would be, when I go and QC this file, and I'm going to sell it to the secondary market, what are they looking at? And interestingly, I posed this to our CTO. I asked him, like, can we automate the selling of these things to the secondary market? And generally speaking, they can't. These guys all want to actually like handle the files. And so, while we can kind of deliver it automatically, their review is often manual. So there's going to be this kind of coming together of, manual versus artificial intelligence reviews, and it's somebody's going to win on that. And I imagine there'll be some balance between the two, but do we trust it? I don't, $1 million loan, that's a hefty loan to just let it run. I mean, there's been talk for 30 years on like, can we get to push button mortgages? Can we just push a button and I get a mortgage? And unfortunately, it doesn't, the ability to rate risk in today's environment requires kind of human intervention. Can that be replaced? Probably. I mean, it probably could. Is it going to be as good? It might be better. And so there's going to be a lot of I don't knows out there for a long time, but it'll get there. I have no doubt it'll get there. Whether it gets there in a clean way, I don't know. I don't know if the industry will move that quickly. We are talking about banking.
At least, yeah, you are talking about banking, but at least we know on the documentation side that there's a lot of opportunity for AI to streamline the process and give the people, the people that want to be hands-on, the time to be, especially when it comes to the retail side of mortgage lending. They can spend their time engaged with a customer or member as opposed to, fumbling through the files. AI will eliminate the inconsistencies, the errors. Same with auto lending. You drop a VIN by accident, you transpose a number, and it becomes a hassle to go back and look for it. And that's, I think, where AI will drive efficiency and reconciliation. That's something we've talked about. JP, you've got a lot of experience outside of banking. What have you learned from other industries, and how can what you've learned been applied to fintech or to banking?
When I worked with telecom, I worked with some semiconductor companies, and I worked with pharma companies. There are a lot of solutions which are horizontal in nature. Say, we build a lot of analyst agents. So you sit on top of your data, and then the agentic architecture goes through all of these data points and then interprets the decisions or gives the data and then does some of thinking around it. So that is one use case which is horizontal, can be applied everywhere. Customer support is another common use case across industries. I feel that this technology is cutting across the organization, so can be carried and applied in multiple industries. And I see in banking mainly, like Steve was also mentioning, in the back office, there's a great tech advancement happening in the document processing and OCR, which is like image recognition, extracting the data, and then the accuracy levels are improving every day. And there are new techniques as well which have come, not just the model enhancements, but new techniques people are trying out. Like RAG is one of the foundation technology process that came up. There are multiple such techniques that are coming up which can be applied mainly for the back office operations. And I'm counting this kind of engagement with you and Steve will help SmartBots draft those problems and then help more enterprises.
Yeah, no, I agree. Good stuff. I mean, there's a lot to be determined. Steve, it looks like you're about to say something.
Well, I think you really struck upon something for me, which is it's the ability to kind of analyze vast amounts of data too, right? Like as we think through like the back office and servicing and things like that, one of the greatest, I think strengths of AI is it doesn't have to look at what's just in front of it. It can go out and find these huge amounts of data to help with, yeah, I think you were talking about the document imaging and things like that. Its ability to use those outside resources is what really I think separates it from, traditional RPA, for example. So you know it's a data intensive system, but that's a huge advantage, right? Like,
Yeah.
you were asking earlier, like, what would it take for, us to use AI to, approve $1 million mortgage? And one of the things that really strikes me about that question is would it approve it in a way that I would recognize today? Right? Like, would it use different underwriting guidelines based on all of these other data sources out there? And it's quite possible that it would. And so that's why it's such a hard question to answer. It's like, what do you do after, after it's after it's followed its stated guidelines? Does it go out of bounds? Does it color out out of the lines? It could. I mean, there's nothing to stop it from doing that. And maybe it makes better decisions that way. I'm not sure, but you can
Only time
see
will
that it's
tell.
coming. Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
right?
it's coming. Well, I'm glad that JP said 2026 is going to be an exciting year. I
Yeah.
have zero doubt about it. I think AI is maturing. I mean, AI, every company's an AI company, every company's a data company. Every company should be built around engagement and experience, and AI is going to allow us to be more efficient, ideally. I know there's fear out there that AI is going to replace positions, and it will. I think smarter organizations, rather than just firing people in mass, will find other places for their people to be where it's more profitable and more meaningful, and the level of engagement's better. At
I,
the end
I
of this,
have
yep.
I have seen one pattern that is going on during this tech evolution, right? So when from the time ChatGPT came up, there was a lot of um, lack of clarity on how this tech can be applied to the enterprises. And I think soon, very soon, in 2026 beginning, we started hearing about agentic, right? I feel agentic is the term that is used to apply this technology, large language models into enterprise. It's a vehicle through which the LLMs can be consumed. Now we are going through a standardization process. When I go to enterprise in all the clients and prospects that I spoke to in 2025, each conversation was different. It was, and now in 2025, there's great amount of standardization. When I speak to someone, prospect, they say they need an MCP server on their Snowflake database, right? It is so clear. This kind of clarity was not there. And
Right.
this standardization in 2026 will help in this adoption much faster.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, 2026 is only 2 months away.
Yeah.
It's
Better get
almost
on that,
here.
JP.
So, gentlemen, it's been fascinating. Appreciate the time you guys had today. I know that we're going to post your contact information at the end of this, and I guess this story will be continued.
Yeah, I know, right? It's an evolution, not a moment in time. So we'll
That's
see where it
that's
goes. Thank you, Bryan. Appreciate it.
yeah, my pleasure.